Now this should really scare you when you're walking around over there, because you're wondering, where does that rubber go? You know, where's it coming from? Well, I tell you what it's doing. If it's not blowing up in the air, it's also churning out the environment. So the worst thing you can do is continue to do this. So, manage the fleet is number one. Manage the service is number two. So we have a service. We have our own service in there. We correlate every piece of data that comes out of that car. We know the battery state of charge. We know the driver's technique on there, which, by the way, is another issue. Because you want to train the drivers, which is part of the whole program. So, and dispatch. Centralized dispatch, centralized billing and collection. So rather than hand the money up and have it go to the end, it's a tap in, tap out with a card, or it's on a telephone. All developed using Philippines. By the way, I think somebody said it, the IT over there is incredible. So we have 8 guys over there, some of them from University of the Philippines, PhD in IT. Freddie happened to be chair of the IT committee in Congress. Here's the ecosystem, just so you know, and this is where, again, I don't want to go too far into this unless somebody's interested later on. We have a large big screen TV at the back. So we have media sources of revenue. We actually do have government support. So I mentioned Secretary of Bio. We've also been all the way up to the Vice President, just about, I think, every secretary we have through the pages of. Because we do want to build over there. We want to build this as a hub. That's the ecosystem. Next slide, please. For the business guys in the room, this is the business. So multiple revenue streams, ongoing revenue streams. We have from the fee collection where we pick up 15% up to what is the media. Can you imagine being able to go to Google and walk in and go, on September 3rd, you had 2,317 people looking at your commercial. And that's what actually happened. So you can actually start targeting media, which is what everybody wants to do. So that's the world. This is a global company. That's where we're going with this. But Manila is a showcase. We're calling this the Manila Project. We've already met with Cradle to Cradle. We're already starting projects to take a look at this so we can expand this out around the world and take a look at this. But we're going to concentrate and focus for the next 8 months strictly on Manila. We're going to make sure that that vehicle works and the whole infrastructure is put in place. And we've got some pretty good partners over there, which under NDA, I'll tell you. Okay, so it's an exciting program. So all I can ask you is, I hope you get it. Thanks. Any questions?
Obviously, it's a very good idea, and it's probably what they need there. What's the buy-in? How viable is it in terms of, it's obviously a significant cultural change?
No, I mean, once again, when you talk to the drivers and you actually deal with the people who are doing it, they are very excited. We have just started taking orders. We have 200 orders with down payments. Original quote was trying to get 120 this year, or I'm sorry, yeah, 620. They're up to 1,000. And the reason being is we've made it. When you get into the financials, you find out that the most expensive part of the electric car is not the car; it's the batteries. But the batteries are like a gas tank. So if I fill up, if I take the batteries out and lease it back to them at the operating expenses, and since we're collecting the money, we can pay off those on a lease basis. And that's how I gained the extra money into the business coffers, to be able to give a little bit more out.
In terms of current operators?
Well, it's a pretty complex system. And here's where Americans are not. Because we go in there with business and say, here's the business guys, we're a better product. And why we always push technology? Because I get a better thing for it. And here's what I found is your partners have to be very, very good. So Congressman Tinga, Tom D, we have a set of partners over there that know the system. So we have met with Congressman Menendez-Vigor, who is running the associations. They are looking to change. They have actually Calvin.
What's the average price for the units?
About 20,000. Including batteries.
It's outright what?
No, the batteries are leased, which brings it down to $12,275 for the car, for the actual vehicle. And what we did was we wanted to match what they're currently paying. We are working with government for incentives, not for us, but for the driver, so he can afford the down payment. And I do think this has real applications with being able to replace cars. I think this is a World Bank play because these vehicles are polluting at an incredible rate. And so you could, the best thing to do would be able to remove those off the road and trash them, scrap them out, bring in the next unit. But to a man, to an association man we met with, to a driver, they all want this. I'll give you an example, which is strange to me. I mean, one of the things that is good from a tech side is we're used to going to look at stuff. The drivers drive sideways. You ever notice that? They drive sideways. And I ask them, well, why do you do that? Why do you sit on the edge of the 16 hours like that? So, well, the seat's hot. The seat, you can't fix it. You know, we've got technologies, all sorts of stuff. So we've got a seat that's a flow-through seat. You know, that you can water it out. And that's what I was saying. We build cars for the cold country. We don't build them for where people move. And that's where we want to go. We want to build a Philippine car in the Philippines and be able to ship that around and say, this is for hot countries. And by the way, that's where everybody's living. The largest migration in history is occurring today. People are moving into cities. And they have no, 51% of the world lives in a city, and by 2030, 60% will be living in cities. How many people own cars in cities? Not very many. 40% in New York. Here's the U.S. We know we all have cars. We have only 40%. If you take a look at the first slide, you'll see 40% of the transportation is done in GPs in the Philippines, and it's 1 billion riders. So for you businessmen, that's 1 billion butts in seats instead of 1 billion eyes on screen. But it's a huge opportunity to make a difference. By the way, Guy, it's one of the partners we're working with, Guy McLean, because we think providing jobs is better than providing housing. So do they.
You know, jeepneys, you're talking about jeepneys. Jeepneys go back and forth, just like 24/7. So how often does the driver need to charge
Actually, the jeepneys do stop. They do stop at night, believe it or not. There's a single route ahead about 200.
Ken, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. We've been off track in terms of our schedule. This discussion can be taken offline. This is really for a panel discussion for everyone to know what's going on. This from a social responsibility perspective, all these initiatives that are happening. So if you'd like to speak to Ken offline, that would be appreciated. We'd like to move on with the panel because we know that our panelists have schedule constraints. And so with that, you know, I want to make sure that we stay on target as much as we can. Thank you.
Okay, with the panelists for the Rise of Startups.